KLIve News Time is now 5:49. The attack in the United Kingdom may be an act of terror. A suicide bomber at an Ariana Grande concert left at least 22 people dead. Chris Copeland is the director of the Institute for Homeland Security at Tarleton State University, and he joins us now live. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So does this have all the markings of a classic terrorist attack?
It has all the markings of a lone wolf terrorist attack, yes. It has a single actor. It has a completely public engagement, all the markings of a lone wolf attack.
Well, how do we know that there isn't some group behind this at this point?
There may be a group behind it, but what we mean by lone wolf is usually there's one attacker or one principal person regarding the attack itself. But it doesn't seem well coordinated, and the weapon seems to be homemade, which kind of leads people to believe, or at least experts to believe that this is really probably a lone wolf, a single person acting on their own. And unfortunately, unless we find some sort of pre-written confession or suicide note, we won't really know for sure whether or not there is a group behind it.
It sounds like from all the shrapnel injuries and everything reported, the device used was similar to the device that was used in the Boston Marathon bombings.
Very good. It's very, very similar to that. These devices are very easy to make, made from homemade items. And that kind of leads me to believe that, the complexity of this attack is very, very shallow. So, the idea behind that is, again, homemade bomb, probably a pressure cooker or something very similar, acts in the same way, lots of amount of nails, bolts, and shrapnel at high velocity. The pictures that we did see coming off of Twitter and coming off of news feeds were of leg injuries. Of course, the closer that you get to that blast, the more potent it becomes. But again, this could have been much more well coordinated, and the death toll could have been much higher, which, again, leads back to a probably lone wolf attack with very minimal support.
And we were talking about this a little bit earlier. As I said, if somebody had some C4 strapped to their body or something and covered it up with a coat, that's one thing. But how do you get this kind of device that is, I know I'm asking you to speculate, but something that would be large, bulky, and very heavy, how do you get something like that into a concert venue?
Well, one, they didn't get into the concert venue. They got it near an exit, and that's a pretty important point to remember, is that they felt that they couldn't get it into the venue itself. But at the same time, there are many ways you can do that. I don't want to necessarily broadcast that out over the air in case there are people listening who would have similar intentions. Mm-hmm. But the idea there is that it's very, very portable. It can be easily found. The recipes for this are both on the regular internet. They're on the dark web. It's very easy to find how to build one of these. And that's kind of, again, the fact that they got it close to an exit is very telling itself, that they didn't get it into the venue. At the same time, the level of coordination was unsophisticated. They could have easily used this as the dispersion with a vehicle-borne attack, following up after it. This could have been much, much worse.
We're speaking with Chris Copeland. He is the director of the Institute for Homeland Security at Tarleton State University. Are you worried about other copycat attacks across maybe Europe and maybe here in the U.S.?
Yes, I am. The way that works is that typically when you have somebody who is lone wolfed, it inspires other lone wolves, especially if it's, low-key, low-funded. So the idea there is that if one person does it, the other people, the other lone wolves, the possible attackers, look at that and go, well, if that person can do it, I can. Or, hey, they had that idea. That's the same idea I had. All I have to do now is get it to an exit. We saw the same thing with vehicle-borne attacks across Europe. Once one had done, we saw copycats come across from other places, including New York. It's very easy to replicate these type of attacks, and it inspires others to do so.
Chris, I was thinking, as I do every time there's something like this happens, I'm going back in my brain trying to remember when it all started, when we got to a point in the world where people were willing to give up their own lives for the sake of murdering innocent people that they don't even know. And there's got to be a psychological aspect to this that the rest of us just can't wrap our heads around. As director of Institute for Homeland Security, probably this is something you've thought about.
Something I think about quite a lot, unfortunately. But at the same time, it's very difficult to understand and parse people whose ideologies may tend to be crazy. You know, I tell my wife and I tell my friends, you can't always, understand crazy people or people who are ideologically unsound. So, I mean,
especially using using your own uncrazy brain, you can't.
Exactly. My paradigm there is from a very rational, reasonable person, and what makes sense to somebody who is unbalanced, mentally disturbed, or ideologically unsound is not going to make any sense to me whatsoever. Motivation is a very difficult thing to comprehend sometimes. If it's one thing if they're acting within a group, the group ideology tends to drive actions and drive specific ideologies. But when you come down to a lone wolf, there's no telling what drove that person to do that unless you find a pre-written suicide note or some sort of written confession, which is unfortunate because then it leaves groups like ISIL and Islamic State to come in and take credit for it and to inspire others to do so because no motivation was found.
All right, Chris Copeland, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your expertise this
Great
morning.
stuff.
We do appreciate it. Chris Copeland, Director of the Institute for Homeland Security at Tarleton State University.